I need some reassurance from my Catholics and Protestants. I could use some feedback from anyone. I'm just discouraged because I went to the Vigil Mass last night for the Holy Day of Obligation, which is today, but you can go to the Vigil, of course, which is the Assumption of Mary. And for the first time that I can ever remember, when I was saying my prayers right after I received the Holy Communion, I didn't feel the Lord's presence. Now, there might be one of two different reasons for this, but I'll go through the first scenario that could have caused it. Okay, so it's really, really crowded. We're in this really, really old church that's beautiful inside and is very, traditional Catholic. It has a kneeling rail, and it's the first time I've been up at a kneeling rail in so many years, and that was cool because I used to be an altar boy, and I would hold the paten under the chin of the parishioners when they would receive Holy Communion. Back then, you weren't allowed to receive it on the hand, so everyone received it kneeling on the tongue. So that's what I got to do last night in a kneeling rail. I was years, but leading up to that, okay, so I get there like half an hour early because I like to read Psalms, and I brought this book on Mary that I was reading beforehand. And so I went I'm kind of ostracized by the clergy and the congregation. It's been that way ever since I got to this church 3 years ago, but I just tried to power through, and I kept thinking, the more I go to Mass, the more I go to Bible study, the more I go to this like men's group, the more they'll just accept me, and the more they'll see I'm a good guy and I love Jesus. Well, it was actually, I think, kind of the loving Jesus part that seemed to work against me, because I was, started going to Mass every single day, confession at least once a week, adoration room, actually signing up for a time for the adoration room. No matter what, wasn't accepted. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But I go and I sit, like, I try to be invisible. I try to sit off to the side or whatever. So I go and I sit in the very farthest backest corner, the last pew, and over in the very right hand, right up against the wall, basically. And there's so many people coming that a lot of people had to actually stand. And I had people like kind of looking at me like, you should give up your seat, I'm a female or something. But it's like I walked there, so I left a whole hour before Mass started to give me time to walk there and to have at least I was actually there like 40 minutes before the starting of Mass. And so, this woman staring at me like that was my age. So, but anyways, two college students that work at one of the Catholic churches come in and sit next to me. But there's about one person could kind of squeeze in between those two, but I have my reading books and my hat and my cell phone next to me. But anyways, this really, really sweet couple I know from Bible study, Phil, and I always forget his wife's name. They're like in their mid-80s. So they come up next to me, and then the two girls are like, oh, we should get out and let them sit here. So they do that. They offer this couple in their 80s their seats. So they go stand right there. And then slowly, kind of, I guess they feel the pressure too to make room for someone. So they start kind of like every 2 minutes, they squeeze over a little bit more. So now there's like, we're almost like two people could fit if I took my books and my hat out of the way. But I didn't know where to put them. It didn't really cross my mind. And then this really kind of heavy set individual, very heavy set, that has huge bags under his eyes. And right when he comes up, he asks me, is anyone sitting there next to me? And when he comes and asks me that, the first impression I have is kind of like, whoa, like, I don't know how else to explain it other than kind of like, whoa. And I said, no. And he's like, no, like confused. And so I start to move my body for him to pass, and I'm like, no. And he's like, no, no one is sitting here. And I'm trying to make room for him. But so I answered his question correctly, but he was hearing no as a negative term, like I was saying, no, you can't sit here. But he said, is anyone sitting there? And I said, no, that's the correct way to answer, right? But then he reads my body language, and I'm totally moving my body and my legs out of the way so that he could squeeze in. So he comes in, he sits down. He's got this jug of water in a plastic see-through bottle. He starts drinking it. And then a few minutes later, I get a woof of alcohol. So it's like, whatever. And then I'm saying all the responses and singing the songs, and I notice he's not saying any responses or any songs. Okay, that's the way some people do it. Or some people, it's been so long, since they've been at Mass, that they don't actually know. But then would they go to collect the money? This is a Thursday night, so I didn't think they were gonna collect money. I guess they do though on holy days of obligation. I just wasn't thinking straight, I guess. So I didn't have any money on me, and this guy's counting out like 6 ones he's gonna put in the thing. And I don't know if this was planned or whatever, because, well, I'll get into that later. So he's got 6 ones, and I have no money. And I guess I'm embarrassed not to put some money in. So I asked him, could you give me $1 so I could have something to put in? Because I did, like, put my hat and my books underneath for him. And so I guess I felt like I had a little bit of leverage. And so he just kind of smiled and gave me $1 to put in. So that was fellowship with darkness, because this guy is drinking alcohol either, because as a Catholic, for Protestant, you can't eat any food an hour before you receive the Holy Eucharist. Most people do it at least an hour before Mass starts, but you can do it an hour before you receive the Eucharist, which is usually about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, possibly 40 into the service. Some priests gave Mass so slowly that they say you can eat something right as you go in the door, because it's a whole hour before you're going to receive the Holy Eucharist. But when I was a kid, it was 8 hours before receiving the Holy Eucharist. And back in olden times, it was even longer. So, the Catholic faith just keeps loosening the roles. Like a different subject is Lent, the amount of fasting people used to do during Lent, like no meat, no dairy, no eggs. Anyways, so I noticed that, and then it's time for us to receive communion. And that is the most solemn time when you're supposed to be preparing your vessel to receive the true body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ. So you have to be steeped in prayer. You have to be making sure that you've repented of any and all, even venial sins, and that the Bible tells us, you can't be mad at a brother when you go and you receive that. So it's better to leave the gifts at the altar and go make amends with the brother before you go up there. So there has to be no vileness in your heart, no anger towards anyone. And so I'm starting to pray, and he leans over and he goes, because the altar is a beautiful wood altar built into the wood structure that has some saints in it. And so they use the altar, praying the old-fashioned way in the Latin Mass, towards the Holy Eucharist and the crucifix. in the Holy Eucharist in the tabernacle. So they said the Mass, and they weren't mic'd up. So they're speaking towards a wall that's away from the audience. So, it was a little bit hard to hear what he was saying at times. But he says, this is the first time I've been to a Mass, and I'm totally in prayer. And he's like, this is the first time I've ever been to a Mass where the priests are facing the wall. And so I thought that was kind of strange, because most Catholics, especially this guy, is older than me, at least I'd say 5 or 10 years. And so I just kind of responded, you've never been to a Latin Mass? And he was like, well, yeah, but that was way back. So right off the top, that's strange. It's like he baited me into responding, because that's kind of strange. He's never been to a Mass where they face the other way, when Latin Masses used to be very common. And he's older than me. And then he's, the only conversation we've ever had, he totally contradicted himself. I've never been to a Mass where they did that. And, well, yeah, Latin Masses, but that was a long time ago. So you have been to Masses where they face the wall. And then he goes on and he's like, but, I guess what I meant to say is I've never been to a regular Mass, Nordus Ordo is what he could have called it, where they're facing the wall. And so I was like, okay, this is an appropriate time for this. So I didn't respond. I just went back into my prayer. But, so I'm thinking maybe fellowship our light has no fellowship with darkness. So I'm thinking I accepted an item from him, which, is inappropriate, because I'm trying to be light leading up to that Holy Eucharist, and this guy is under the influence. I smelled that alcohol on him. Heck, he might have been drinking vodka as he's right up to the moment of when he's going to receive the Holy Eucharist. I mean, just going to Mass under the influence of alcohol would be wrong. So even if he stopped an hour before the Eucharist and I just smelled the residue on his breath, that's completely wrong. I don't ever remember going to Mass under the influence of any drugs. Secondly, he may have actually been drinking vodka during the Mass. Wow. And then going up and receiving Holy Eucharist. I think that might qualify as a mortal sin. I'm not sure. So that's one reason it could be. The other reason is totally on me, because I shared something I shouldn't have. I made a video, which I've now taken down, about like 4 or 5 days ago, sharing like the most intimate prayer that I give the Lord leading up to the Holy Eucharist and right after the Holy Eucharist. It has to do with, what we say, Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word and my soul shall be healed. And I kind of felt my intuition was kind of saying, maybe you shouldn't share this before I made that video. And I went and made it anyways without praying on it. And so I'm thinking maybe, that was wrong of me to share this extremely intimate thing that the Lord seems to really, really love and appreciate with anyone that's willing to watch. And so maybe the Lord didn't. So when I was going through that same prayer, that same scenario in my head, maybe that was the reason, because now it was no longer intimate. It was no longer special. But back to people sitting next to me that are inappropriate. So there's a particular priest that when he sees me, he'll run up and like make sure I see him like looking at me frantically, and then he'll like run out. And then immediately someone will come up and sit right next to me that tries to basically distract my focus on the Mass and my prayers. For instance, he sent this one lady that always used to give me dirty looks and roll her eyes when I would make a comment during Bible study. So she comes up and sits right down next to me. And then we're passing the wicker basket to put money in. So I put my money in, I go to hand it to her, and she won't take it. She's acting like she's just totally distracted, looking to her left. So I kind of just like put it a little bit farther out to where she could see it in her peripheral vision. But it's obvious at this point that she's not going to take it, and it's on purpose. And so she just like almost turns farther. I guess like hoping that I would touch her and maybe she'd flip out like, why did you touch me? Or, I don't know. But so then I look at the guy down the aisle that's like 5-6 feet down our pew, and I just stand up and I go to give it to him, and then he stands up and he meets me halfway and he takes it. You know, little things like that. Or someone that, like this guy would try to talk to me in inappropriate times, or they'll just make like weird fidgety movements and little sounds, like clicking sounds, again, like their ring against the pew or whatever. You know, it's bizarre that this stuff goes on, but you know, like I said, people have tried to make me very, very uncomfortable from my first Mass here, and it's bizarre. You know, and I can't help but think that it has to do with being chosen, and they see how strong the Holy Spirit is within me, and there's jealousy, envy. Maybe some individuals don't actually believe in God. I don't know what to make of it. It's bizarre, but I'm just so bummed out. I have been apologizing and praying on. I think I'm going to do a fast to apologize to the good Lord for sharing that thing of intimacy that he really, really loves and appreciates. It usually brings me to tears when I say this prayer right before Holy Communion and right after Holy Communion, and I just blab it out to the whole world when I have to think about, like, you know, like if you have a wife and you're intimate with her, you know, you don't go out and explain what intimacy you had the next day to anyone that's willing to listen. So that was kind of rude and disrespectful of that relationship. Or it could be this fellowship with darkness. You know, I forgot how often this Catholic priest constantly does like a triple take when he sees me, and then literally like runs out, and you know, within like 2 minutes there's a flying monkey being sent to sit right next to me and to distract me and do weird things like churn away from me instead of accepting the basket, because you see the basket going back and forth aisle to aisle, you know, so everyone's always aware. I've never had that happen in my entire life of being a Catholic. So yeah, but now a deeper problem is I'm so dejected on how I've been treated by the clergy and the congregation that it's got me thinking about just whatever other options I can find, because I'm kind of, you know, locked into going to, there's only 2 parishes, and I have, you know, this vibe at both of them, and I don't know, I'm considering maybe Greek Orthodox. There is a church not too far away, but I'm sure my priest would talk to those priests and try to turn them against me, or just maybe taking a break from Catholicism until I move into a different town. I mean, I had someone that demanded that I join certain activities like total control, and then that person, while I'm doing what she's demanding, 3 times she, with anger on her face, kind of turned to me abruptly and said, "Why did you move up here?" You know, and I explained all 3 times like an idiot, you know, why I moved up here. But then the 3rd time she actually said, you know, "You should move to this other city because I know you're conservative, Republican, you know, and they are too. So I think you should move to this town." It's like, and who are you to me again? You know? So it's just very, very disheartening very, very, very disheartening. And that's the hard part. I brought so much love and so much enthusiasm to this congregation that was in my heart. And I treated everyone with so much kindness and love. Not going out of my way. That's just the heart that the Lord gave me. And I was hoping to supplement my biological family that I went no contact with for narcissistic abuse with a new family. Fell flat. And then I take the same genuine, authentic goodness and love that's in my heart to this apartment complex. Totally fell flat. I have just like so much attacks from neighbors, and I can't get help from management. Same with the last apartment complex. I had so much just vileness directed right at me nonstop from roommates. I have to live with roommates to keep a roof over my head, and I couldn't get any assistance from the apartment management. And then the cops going so far out of their way to treat me like I am just scum, and so that's why these chosen videos have been kind of helpful to help me try to understand and make sense out of, almost everyone just going so far out of their way. So I'm going to leave it there, but more than ever, I need some feedback. Even if you're a Protestant and you just want to say the church is evil, I understand humans are broken. We're all broken. We're all hypocritical at one level or another. And so I understand why you might say the Catholic Church is evil, but no matter what, I do believe that Peter was the first pope, and it's been a nonstop concession. And so this is the church, in my belief, that Jesus started. And he said, evil will enter the church, but the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. And you have very, very respected bishops and priests and in Catholicism saying the evil is clearly here. And it was a direct effort that was started in the 50s to hire primarily gay priests. And so, then the Masonic lodges, you had a lot of Masons join the Catholic Church, and at the highest levels of Masons, they have pedophilia. And so that's an evil organization, and they've been involved with the Catholic Church. Masons was a big part of the development of this town where I live. So there's an undercurrent, they still have the lodge, they still have their meetings there. So it's just like, my lease is up in March, so I have to make it to March. But man, the amount of evil, if we're not in the end times, I can't see it getting any worse. So any kind of feedback I would be greatly appreciated on what the heck can I do. But the Orthodox don't believe in the Immaculate Conception, which I kind of have a problem with because I've always believed in that. There's a few other things. They don't have a pope, they just have bishops. I could accept that easier than not having the Immaculate Conception. But I think I'm gonna look into the Greek Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox Church a little bit more. Just because they, and what their theory is, they've stayed true to the original Catholic Church, where a lot of new things have been added to the Catholic Church, and they just want to stay true to the beginning of the doctrines. So that's it. Please, please, please leave a comment. I have no one else to talk to about how I'm going to deal with this. God bless.